First of all, thank you all for coming today for our announcement. We think we got some pretty good news, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. We're announcing Project Inspire today. And Project Inspire means that Eastman Chemical is committing to spend $1.6 billion. Now that's, for us average folks, that's with a B, a billion. For these folks, that's not with a T, a trillion. 1.6 billion, which by the way is a lot of money. We're going to spend that over 7 years, and we're going to spend that right here in Kingsport, Tennessee. Thank you. That's kind of the way I feel too. We're going to do that over 7 years, and it's some of it's what you would normally expect, right? I mean, we're going to be spending on growth, and I want to remember to talk just a little bit about growth. But we're going to be spending money on growing the company and what we need to grow the company capacity and warehousing space, et cetera. You know Eastman, you know we like taking care of our community and the environment, so we're going to be spending it on all the stuff that takes care of the environment and safety and the health and wellness of our employees. Because we're growing, we're also going to need to spend money on office space. And that is something a little different, something new. So all this cash isn't going to get spent inside the gates of the plant. We're actually going to be adding to our corporate campus in a fairly significant way with what I imagine is going to be a pretty nice office building over there near the Toy Reed Center and our building 280 where we spend every day. And that's because we're committing to add at least 300 new jobs, not just replacement, but 300 new jobs to this area. I feel good about that too. I'm going to come back talking about growth and my stakeholders, but first I just want to mention we have some really distinguished, I call them friends of Eastman, who have chosen to dedicate their lives to serving others in government, and they are on the stage with us, and they're each going to come up and be able to say a few words. But I just want to say how fortunate we are that we could coordinate the schedules for Eastman to make this announcement on a day when it just so happens all 5 were in town to meet with our mayor, Dennis. So, Dennis, where's Dennis? Thank you, Dennis, for making him available for some period of time. Obviously, we have a great relationship both at the federal level and the state level and at the local level, and that was really important to make this happen. Because I wanted to remind people that, believe it or not, it's a competitive world out there. And I see some gray hair, and mine is definitely heading that way. And so I know a number of you are retiring, and you're remembering what it was like when you worked. And I just want to tell you that it's not getting any easier. The competition is not resting. They are out there. There's international competition. Eastman has 44 manufacturing sites around the world. When we go through our capital programs and look at where we're going to expand, we have a number of choices. We do have plants in Europe and in China and in Brazil and in North America. And so we have choices as to where we put our money and where it makes sense to expand. Now, we all know Kingsport is our largest facility. We have about 6,700 employees here. So very important to us. But we've got to make those choices on the margin. And when you have a collaborative relationship with your government, both local and state and federal, such that you can have that public-private partnership, this is when you win the competition. This is when it works well. And that's what we have here in Tennessee. So I'm very proud of that. I look at these 5 gentlemen, and I think, if I had to field a team of government officials, these would be my first stringers. In fact, if I carry the analogy a little further, I guess, Morgan, you'd have to play center. Although Lamar's going to give you a run for it, and Senator Corker, you're a guard, right? How often am I going to get a chance to do this, guys? I mean, come on. You wouldn't take the shot? Come on. Absolutely. In all seriousness, we have a fantastic team of folks who represent us, and you know that, and you believe that, along with me. I have 5 stakeholders. Sometimes people think I just have, shareholders to worry about. I got 5 stakeholders to think of as a CEO. And I have the shareholders, of course, and that's the trips to Boston and New York, and they come down here, by the way, and see the plant. But I also have customers and suppliers, and I have communities and employees. And the one thing I found that they can all rally around, because there's so many things they don't rally around, where the shareholders say, I want you to do this, and the employees will say, why are we spending money on that? But the one thing they can all agree on is growth, that they are all benefited when the company is growing. And Eastman's been doing that. Most of you have seen kind of our track record. You know our culture. We're a fairly modest bunch. But it's been a good run. And I think it's going to continue. And that's what this announcement says, is that we believe it's going to continue and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. So we are up close to 14,000 employees now globally. We were under 10,000 just a few years ago. And we're going to be pushing $10 billion in revenue. And we need to spend this money, and we need to build these office spaces and continue that growth, because all of this is due, all of that growth is due, and the ability for me to stand up here and make this announcement is because we have close to 14,000 professional men and women at Eastman who do an exceptional job each and every day. And I imagine in an audience like this, almost everyone has a family member or a close friend who works at Eastman. You know what I'm talking about. The quality of our people are outstanding. And that is the reason that we've been successful and can continue to grow like this. So for those of you who I see out there that we have so many relationships with, I want to say thank you very much for what you've done to help Eastman. And with that, since I could go into this big long speech I got, but since I have some experts who do that for a living to the left of me, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I don't even think of these gentlemen as speech givers. That's more what they do in Massachusetts and Connecticut. We down here just talk to people about issues. And so let me do that. Let me get our governor, Governor Haslam, up to say a few words. Governor.
Thank you, Jim. We are very, very grateful for your leadership. It has been a privilege to work with you. Here's what we're doing today. Jim said we could be casual and informal. So here's what we're really doing today. We are reaffirming vows in my opinion, between 2 couples that have had a long and wonderful relationship. One of those being Eastman, obviously an icon of a company, and the other being the state and local governments that work with them. And I think it's significant that after such a long relationship, the partners said, hey, this really works for both of us, and we'd love to not just keep going, but to do it in a bigger way. One thing that's important for all of us to remember, we all think of Eastman as being this huge company, right? They've got 7,000 employees just in the region, and as Jim said, we all know somebody or have a family member who works for Eastman. It's impossible around here not to. You just couldn't do it. But what we probably still underestimate who Eastman is. Literally, this company has a global reach, and they could be deciding we're going to expand or move our office and expand it somewhere else, really anywhere else. As you talked, I had a chance to talk with their leadership team prior to coming in here. And when you talk about business, they're not just talking about what happens in this region or even the U.S. It's, well, Asia's doing this and Europe's doing this and we're doing this in continental Africa, et cetera. So you realize that the global scope and reach of this company, they could be anywhere. And when they first started talking about this expansion, I woke up one night saying, I don't want to be the governor who was there when Eastman decided to expand somewhere else. So thank you for letting me sleep a little better. But one of the things, like I said, is the longevity. It's fitting that this process, this expansion, I think, if I did my math right, will culminate and will finish in 2020, which will be the 100th anniversary of Eastman. Somebody nod their head that I got that right, okay? So there's something very fitting that this is happening at that point in time. Jim, like I said, you've been a privilege for us to work with, and I think all of us who've just gotten to know Mark look forward to continuing that certain relationship of doing what we can to help Eastman do what it does best, which is serve customers around the world and continuing to grow their presence and impact here. Let me just add one other thing. Here's why this is such a big deal. Eastman is not just in some other company. It's not like any other company because of the impact that they have. If you think about all of the good things that are happening in this part of East Tennessee, Eastman is right at the core of all of them. Educational efforts, which are being copied, by the way, not just all over the state, but all over the country for things that are happening right here. Eastman's at the heart of it. As we look to think about how to make higher ed more relevant and more affordable and more achievable for more people, Eastman is at the heart of that as well. And whether you look at the CEO of the company or thousands of other workers, all of them are committed to a bigger picture beyond just Eastman. That's why this is such a big deal. If this was just, another company announcing 300 more jobs, it would be one thing. But this is Eastman, who has literally, I think, become a model of what a great company looks like in providing great products and then expanding and caring about the place that they call home. That, and we will never, ever take for granted $1.6 billion in investment. So I can assure you that. Let me make one other note real quick. I do want to thank the members of the Tennessee General Assembly. It's, as governor, you get to get up and give good news, et cetera. But the reality is anything depends on the General Assembly approving the plans and the budget, et cetera. Tony Shipley, who actually represents this district, John Lundberg, who's from up in Bristol. The Lieutenant Governor, Ron Ramsey, was very, very sorry he couldn't be here today. He had a prior plan for this, but you can be rest assured when we first started talking about Eastman expanding, Ron was at the very heart of those conversations and making certain that it happened. So on behalf of the state of Tennessee, there's 6.5 million of us across the state, but we don't take for granted one bit Eastman, and we're very, very grateful that you would make this announcement. This is a big deal for the state of Tennessee. It really is. This is one of those red letter days that we will always remember, and we will always be grateful, and we pledge to be a great partner to you going forward. Thank you very, very much. I almost forgot my most important job. That was to introduce our senior senator, who also was one of my predecessors as governor and a great Tennessean in anybody's book, the Honorable Lamar Alexander.
Thank you, Governor, and Jim Rogers and Mark and ladies and gentlemen. Jim mentioned the Toy Reed Center. I remember a story Toy Reed told me about an Eastman employee who had been transferred to South Carolina. It's a very good employee. And Toy said about 6 months later, the employee called him up and said, "Mr. Reed, I have to come home." And Toy said, "Well, why is that? This was a promotion for you." And the employee said, "Well, I like the people. It was a promotion, but I don't have any place to rest my eyeballs." And so he came back to Kingsport. Eastman has been a part of the landscape, it seems to us East Tennesseans, about as long as Roan Mountain has, and very, very important. Jim Rogers said that each of us has our stories. Our families is my Uncle Tommy Rose, who came home from World War II and got a job at Alcoa. And then he announced one day he was moving to Kingsport and taking a job at Eastman. Well, that shocked us because we thought the top of the world was living in Maryville and having a job at Alcoa. But over the years, he taught us about the loyalty of Eastman employees to the company, about the quality of the company, about the importance of the company. And we saw firsthand in our cousins and our family how the good jobs at Eastman translated into stronger families, better schools, stronger communities. It all went together, and it has for a long, long time. As Jim said, the employees are the reason for the success of Eastman, and therefore the reason for this announcement today. But my guess is that all 7,000 or so of the employees in this area and their families understand that a ship needs a captain, and Eastman's had a really good captain the last few years in very competitive waters. It's hard to be modest about Eastman's growth and success over the last several years. It's really been phenomenal. Somebody once told me that people remember the last thing you do, and this certainly isn't the last thing Jim Rogers is ever going to do. He'll have many more chapters to his life, but in this chapter, if this is the last thing he does, it'll be well remembered as a very appropriate thing and very important legacy for the people of Tennessee and for this company. And I'd like finally to add my congratulations to Governor Haslam. He's helped make Tennessee an even better place to do business. And he showed a lot of wisdom in remembering that you don't run away from friends you already have in pursuit of friends you might get. So he's at least as interested in Eastman, or more interested than in some attractive, alluring company that might come from some other place in the world. He's done a terrific job, and I salute him and his team for this. So this is an historic day. I appreciate being invited to be here. The new Eastman headquarters is right where it ought to be, and none of the Eastman employees who are there will have to worry about where to rest their eyeballs, because they'll be working and living at home. Thank you. Now it is my privilege to introduce my idea of an absolutely terrific United States Senator, Bob Corker.
Well, like Lamar, I am thrilled to be invited, and Jim, glad to play guard on the Friends of Eastman team anytime. I'm not a good shot, but I'm really rough on people going to the goal. So this is truly an outstanding day, and I want to start by talking a little bit about Jim. One of the great privileges that people like me have is to meet people up close and personal and really get to know them, and I've had that opportunity with Jim Rogers. And I said this morning at a breakfast, and I've said it before, but I don't know of anyone who epitomizes a balanced person of values, who knows how to lead a company to great heights and to share that with all the people around him more than Jim. I really hope at some point in my life to, and aspire to be, the balanced, thoughtful person that Jim is. And as Lamar just mentioned, for this to be one of the last things that he announces at Eastman, among many other things that he'll do down the road, I'm sure, but for this to be the last big announcement that he makes, I just want to say to you, Jim, I think you're an exemplary CEO. You're an exemplary leader of a community. You're an exemplary family person. And I am really proud to call you my friend. Thank you for being with us today. I know that Mark and this great executive team are going to take Eastman to even greater heights. And I know today is a foundational moment for that to occur. I too want to applaud our governor. I don't think people will fully realize until, as time goes on, what the state with Ron and Tony and many other General Assembly members did to make this happen. But the announcement, especially of the office building that is being built here and what that means for the future as far as the commitment to this area, was one that took a lot of work back and forth. I want to thank the Eastman team for being so committed to our state, a great state with outstanding prospects for the future because of the kind of environment that our governor and others have created. But Governor Haslam, I want to thank you for the way that you got personally involved in this, in the nitty-gritty, came up here and did the things that needed to happen. And as Lamar mentioned, planted a shade tree for others to sit under. I think future Eastman employees will be forever grateful for your activity here and the combination that you and Jim have put together. So thank you. I want to close by this. You know, people, Lamar and I talk about this a great deal, but it is a tremendous privilege to do what we do and to come to work each day at the Capitol and to know that people like you have entrusted us to make the kind of decisions that need to be made. I know that Washington, because of our inability to deal with some of the bigger issues that we have to deal with, has really had a dampening effect on the investments that are being made around our country. And even though Tennessee has one of the brightest futures of any state in the country, I know that to be the case. When I'm here with civic leaders and people who have committed themselves so much to this part of the state and to the communities in which they live and serve as civic leaders, business leaders, and volunteers, I want to say to each of you, when I see a $1.6 billion investment, when I see the kind of culture that exists here in Kingsport and the surrounding area, it causes me to want to go back to Washington and work even harder to alleviate those things that are keeping this kind of thing from happening in other parts of the country. So thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for being a part of our state that really is leading and creating these kind of jobs. And thank you for allowing me to do what I do. And with that, I want to bring to the podium Congressman Phil Rowe. Lamar said something last night in private when we were together, and I'll repeat him. But he said he wouldn't say it publicly, but I'm going to say it for him publicly. One of the great attributes that Congressman Rowe has is that he's actually smart. And you don't know how much that matters. He's done an exemplary job for all of you, I promise you. When he speaks, people listen. He is my friend, he's your friend, he's Eastman's friend, and I look forward to his comments.
How do you follow that? Well, I'm going to follow that. And Jim, thank you for the invite. Congress has a 9% approval rating, so we're really glad to be invited anyway. And I told the speaker the other day, I said, look, it could be worse. I read the poll, and actually we poll above North Korea, Lindsay Lohan, and meth labs, so it could be a lot worse. I just can't tell you, Jim, how excited I was when I found out about this, and what an incredible community partner. I've lived in this community, in this region, for 36 years. Many of you have lived your lifetimes here, and Eastman is a focal point of this community. I can't imagine this region without it. And I know how much it's added. I see Dennis here, and Dennis Phillips, the mayor, and I think of things locally, and I see several mayors sitting up here. And these folks understand almost better than anybody that if Eastman succeeds, our community succeeds. Our schools are better, our roads are better, our communities are better. And Jim, I want to thank you for that, and I want to add my accolades to what Senator Corker said. First thing I knew about Jim Rogers was he's an Eagle Scout. That means a lot to me. Being an Eagle Scout, I knew about him. He's also a veteran. Monday we had Memorial Day, and he's a Navy pilot. He served his country both as a scout, both as a Navy man, a family man. And when the economic times got tough, what does a leader like Jim Rogers do? Everybody shared the pain. Everybody shared it equally. And that kind of leader is somebody people will follow, and they clearly have done that in this community. And Jim, thank you for that leadership. I don't think we'll know for probably years what this investment will mean to our region. Just yesterday, I was in Johnson City at a small business, 38 employees. One family member had worked there. His father had worked there 28 years. He'd worked there 30 years. Guess what? Eastman's one of their customers. And this story goes everywhere. And it just doesn't stop here. It goes through Southwest Virginia. I don't know how far, 50 miles from here at least, in every direction your influence falls. So thank you for that. It's my privilege now to introduce one of my very, very good friends. And before I do that, I can't think of it. I was thinking it sitting up here a minute ago. If you line the governor and two senators up, I cannot think of a state in the union that's better represented than these gentlemen right here. There are none. I've thought about it. And the governor mentioned our local leadership, and certainly without our local representatives in Nashville, this might not have happened. And Governor, without your leadership, so thank you for that. It's a great privilege of mine now to introduce one of my best friends in Congress. We got to know each other several years ago when he ran against a long-standing incumbent, a good man, Rick Boucher. But it was time for a change in Southwest Virginia, and Morgan Griffith brought a ton of experience from small business, from his leadership in the Virginia legislature. And so it's my privilege to introduce my friend, Morgan Griffith.
Thank you. Like the others, I am thrilled to be here. I have to admit, I was a little worried that I might be the onion in the flower bed coming down here with all the Tennessee guys, but I was much pleased to find out I'm actually the center on the team, and glad to be on that team of Eastman friends, because as Phil pointed out, the footprint of Eastman goes a lot further than just right here in Kingsport. It is a huge footprint. This facility employs a lot of people in my district, in the 9th District of Virginia, over in Gage City and Weber City, and you go on up and down. A lot of folks drive a long way to share in the environment of the employee loyalty and the loyalty of the company to its employees that you all have built here with Eastman. And so I am pleased to be with you, and thank you very much for that. I would be remiss, having been in the state legislature a long time, not to say thank you to the state legislators of Tennessee for all the work that you did, and Governor for making this possible, because whenever you make a plan like this happen, you do affect all those people, even if they're not in your state. So those of us in Virginia who are benefiting from the good work that you've done, most of it will come to Tennessee, but that bit that gets to Virginia, we're very appreciative, and thank you for that. Also, would be remiss if I didn't introduce my friend Israel O'Quinn of the Virginia House of Delegates, who's in the back of the room, because he recognizes also that this is an important day for not just Tennessee, but for Virginia. I also have to thank Eastman, because I have a long district, and they actually have a facility on the other end of the district, about 3 hours away, in Martinsville, Virginia, that employs a few folks. And while they won't directly benefit from this announcement today, we are thrilled to have Eastman in Martinsville. You all have been there, what, about 2 years in the Martinsville acquired?
Came with the acquisition.
Came with the acquisition. So that was really exciting. So I'm glad to be with you. Jim, I really appreciate the fact that you all are stepping up and making investments at a time when many companies are trying to figure out how to retreat. You all are advancing. This is truly an inspirational announcement today. It is also truly a pleasure to be a part of the Eastman Friends and to be your friend. Thank you so much for inviting me, and now I'm turning the podium back over to you. Thank you, sir.
Just a couple more thoughts and I'll let you go. Somewhere in there we got off track and they started talking about me. For all the Eastman employees in the room, I'm still CEO for 7 more months. None of that lame duck stuff, okay? We'll have the cake and coffee and all that junk sometime in December. Seriously, I'm sure I'm going to say it many more times, but it has been truly a pleasure to serve with the people I've been allowed to serve with and the team. And they have my every confidence that this is going to continue for years to come. Speaking of years to come, I think it's an important point that I don't see any reason why I can't say it, but obviously with this size investment and us expanding our corporate campus, this means that the Eastman headquarters is going to be in this part of Tennessee for years and years to come. And I think I feel good about that. I personally feel good about that because I call this home. The last thing, and quite often that's the only thing that sticks in your mind, is that last thing people hear. So let me put the commercial in for the governor and his team. And I wanted to save that for last. Tennessee is open for business. Maybe you've heard that phrase, but Tennessee is open for business. And it has been a business-like experience. It has been a give and take. It has been a back and forth. I mentioned earlier that it's a competitive world out there. Well, guess what? The states are pretty competitive. There's 49 other states that would just love to have someone like Eastman. Well, actually maybe 47 other states if I'm perfectly honest about California and New York. But there is some good, those cameras aren't really rolling, are they? It's a wonderful experience to be here and to have our major facility here and to have our headquarters here and to be able to work with professionals who truly understand business and what is important to business and what that does for all of those stakeholders. And so I just hats off to the governor personally, but also to his team. And he'd be the first to tell you, as he did, that he works with a number of wonderful professionals as well. So they're the ones who made it happen, and we very much appreciate that they did. So with that, that concludes our remarks. We again thank you for coming out today, and I hope you have a great day.